say welcome, and I'll say we're here to offer practical tips and tools.
You are better welcome.
Okay.
I'll go welcome. I got it. Yeah, you do the welcome.
Welcome.
I don't like anything scripted. Ready. Cut. Take 2.
Welcome to an Intentional Marriage Podcast. We are Chad and Kristen here to discuss all things marriage.
And offer practical tips and tools to help encourage you to be intentional in your marriage.
Because we know great marriages don't just happen, do they, honey?
No.
You have to be intentional. So
today's topic, Kristen, our first inaugural topic, our first one, is why does marriage have to be so hard? Wow, we're going to jump right in. But before we do, I just want to thank those that are listening, whether it's via podcast or maybe they're watching on YouTube. So welcome aboard, and we're here. We're along for the ride, and we're glad you're here joining us.
Yes. So the question of the day is, why is marriage so hard?
Yeah.
Well, because one of us is perfect and one of us isn't.
Yes.
Okay, just kidding.
You know, Kristen, when I think of that, I think of those expectations. When we first got married, when couples get married, some people have that fairy tale view of marriage is going to save me. Marriage is my knight in shining armor. Oh, this woman is so gorgeous. We're going to have sex every day of the week, every place. We just have these wonderful expectations. And all of a sudden, when we actually get married, things don't quite line up.
So you're saying like our expectations lead to some disappointment, which makes us think marriage is harder than it should be?
Yes.
Okay, that makes sense. I think there's several reasons why marriage is hard. I agree with you. Like, we do enter in thinking, oh, this perfect person, I'm marrying my soulmate, and we're just going to live a fairy tale life of happily ever after, and then kids set in and bills set in and responsibilities, and then even little things start bugging us, like why do you not squeeze the toothpaste from the bottom? Why do you squeeze it in the middle? Or why do you leave your underwear on the floor after you take a shower and not pick it up? I know I probably have a few things too that you didn't meet your expectations, but I think sometimes it's the way you start out, too. Yeah,
you know, Kristen, I was just going to say that. Let's think back real quick to what we saw, what was modeled for us for marriage. I think for myself, my parents were very affectionate.
Yes.
They were kissing all the time. They were kissing on the counter. I assume there was more going on than kissing. Probably. But very loving, very touchy. My friends would come over and my folks would be making out, and they wouldn't even want to come in the house. They were like, no thanks. I'm like, oh, it's just my parents coming in. So my view is that's how marriage is going to be. We're going to be affectionate. It's just, I can't wait to get married because someone's going to be there and give me that same type of attention. How was it for you?
Okay, so I grew up a little, we both grew up with kind of similar backgrounds and
Christian homes.
Yeah, our parents' values were the same and whatnot. But yes, the way their relationships looked different. My dad had a lot of health issues, which I think brought in some challenges that I wasn't aware of as a kid. Yeah. I personally didn't see my parents like being very affectionate at all. I knew they loved each other, but I didn't see a lot of hugging and kissing and hand holding like you did. So for me, that was like foreign. Like, we don't kiss in the kitchen. That must happen like behind closed doors after 10 o'clock at night.
Only in the movies.
Yeah. So I think that's an expectation like you brought up. Like, okay, it's hard because it doesn't go the way I thought it was going to go. Yeah. And my wife isn't like how my mom was. I mean, not like you want to marry your mom, but you know what I'm saying.
Yeah. That would be weird.
That would be weird. Although we are a lot alike in some ways. So, so I think, like you said, what you saw growing up, if it's different than what your actual experience in marriage is makes it challenging. I think too, where we started, we kind of started behind the 8 ball in a sense. So
let's go into that a little bit.
Okay.
Let's take some time to tell our listeners, if they don't know who we are,
Sure,
a little bit about who we were. So, Chris and I met at Liberty University, a large Christian university down in Virginia. We were both from Michigan, but we happened to travel there. I was a year older, and I had already had a year there, and I was getting ready to go to my sophomore year, and me and a good friend, a shout out to our friend Rob Kropp, he and I talked, hey, let's go down a few days early. Let's go down and meet some of these freshman girls. Let's go down and be the first ones, and before the
best decision of your life, honey. Okay, I won't get too far ahead.
Yes, I was. And so we go down early. We met up, and then we say, hey, let's go hang out. We know where a lot of the kids are, the freshman students are going to be. And so it was a fun night meeting a bunch of people. But all of a sudden, and this is my version of the story,
okay,
I hear Rob yell from across the area that we're at, hey, Chad, come here. He's waving to me. I look at him. This one's from Michigan. And he's pointing at Kristen. I'm like, oh, yes, a girl from Michigan. And again, being in Virginia, it was exciting to meet a girl from back home. And so we just started chit-chatting a little bit, started talking.
Okay.
Okay, you want your side
well,
already?
okay, wait, before you go too far, I have to tell my side of the evening.
Okay.
So it was the very first day my parents dropped me off. Like, they weren't even out of the state yet. Hadn't even crossed state lines yet. And I was so excited. I was a freshman. It was the first day of, classes hadn't even started and whatnot. So I was getting ready to meet 2 girls from back home for dinner, and they were late. And so I just decided I was going to wander out into this courtyard. I heard a bunch of commotion out there, and I was going to go see what was going on. So sure enough,
Was I the commotion out there?
You were the commotion, all right. So I walked through these double doors and out into the courtyard, into the sea of college students, and I was kind of making my way through, and I didn't even know where I was going, but all of a sudden this guy jumps out in front of me, your buddy Rob, and he's like, hey, where are you from? And it startled me a little bit, and I was like, oh, I'm from Michigan? Like, who are you and why are you in my face? And and that's when he was like, hey, Chad, this girl's from Michigan. And I turned around, and here it is,
and honey. All the bright lights.
It was like the Griswold family Christmas tree moment. The lights were shining, and yes, they were. The lights were shining, and you had a sparkling smile.
And there's a reason.
And the reason for the sparkling smile is because he had a silver tooth on the bottom. He literally did.
It's not there anymore.
It's not there. Okay, it's not there.
Online, there's no silver tooth.
But, so here's the deal. I have to preface this next part of the story. So, before my parents dropped me off at school, my mom said to me, Kristen, I have one stipulation with you going to school so far away. She said, you can only date guys from Michigan. And I was like, what? She said, yes, I don't want you finding some southern gentleman, falling in love, and riding off into the sunset, never coming home again. So I was like, yeah, right, whatever, Mom. Okay. But, so you had that in your favor starting out.
Yes. Well, and we didn't start right then. We started running into each other, seeing each other, slowly started hanging out. Yeah, and then
because this was before cell phones. It was before
you didn't have a car. Freshmen were allowed to have cars back then.
So we literally were bumping into each other.
I had a car.
Yes.
And I think you liked me more for my vehicle than me.
Well, but I wasn't sure.
Still to be
I wasn't sure how I was going to get off campus if I didn't have a car. So, so not only you were from Michigan, you had a truck, and I thought you were cute. So there were 3 things in your favor.
Wait, stop. I don't know if she truly thought I was cute yet, because after I met her in that courtyard that night, she went back in and brought a friend out, and she did it 2 different times, brought 2 different friends to introduce to me, really say, what do you think? Do you think he's cute enough for me?
I was just
she had to see other people's opinions.
Not true.
But anyway, we quickly started dating. And we got it 2-3 weeks in, and then you had to call your mom back again.
So this was, again, before cell phones. I had to go down the hall, use the pay phone on my, in the dorm. And so I called my mom and, just checking in. I told her, hey, Mom, you're not going to believe it. I met this guy. He is from Michigan, Three Rivers, Michigan. He lives on Coon Hollow Road, and he has a silver tooth. And there was a pause on the other end of the phone, and she said, okay, you can expand your territory to Illinois and Indiana.
You believe that? Do you believe that?
Oh, I was like, no, really.
Your territory.
Okay. It's okay. Well, it's better than what your mom did. Listen. You know what his mom did? She would write letters to us, or letters to him at college.
And she would tell me,
she always said, P.S., keep your other eye open.
Our parents were not the most supportive initially. I think they both thought you guys are just jumping in way too fast.
Yes.
I think they're more slow down. There's other people to maybe date and see to be sure.
Well,
but when we met each other, you were sure it was me.
I was? Okay.
No, we quickly fell in love.
We did.
We loved it, and we dated for a couple years.
Yes.
And this is where the story gets rocky, because we 2 years in college, we're dating, we're talking future plans, future engagement, a future together. We had that in our mindset, but all of a sudden, we got pregnant.
I love that you say we, honey.
It was we.
Yeah, because I couldn't have done it myself.
It takes two to tango. If you're not aware of that, we were pregnant.
We.
What are we going to do?
Specifically me, but yes.
Yeah, here we are at a Christian university. We're not supposed to have this happen to us. We're not supposed to be having sex out of wedlock. All those things. Yep. The shame, guilt. So we quickly got married. We called that a shotgun wedding. We got married, threw it together. And our parents were both very supportive. Yes. They said, we want to support you. I had 1 year of college left to finish. Kristen, unfortunately, dropped out because we now had a baby. Mm-hmm. So here we were, very young, 21 and 19, married and soon to have a baby.
3 months later.
3 months later, when you turn 20 and you had a baby.
I always like to say, well, because, where we come from, that is a big no-no. Like getting pregnant before you get married, that's really... There's a lot of shame and guilt associated with that. And it's not an ideal way to start a marriage, clearly. And it's, not part of God's original design. So there was a lot of hiccups and a lot of, there was a rough start to say. But I like to kind of tell people, well, I got married at 19 and I had a baby when I was 20. That was 3 months. There were only 3 months difference there. But, we were young. Yeah. We started out pretty much knowing nothing. Just what we saw modeled growing up, which both of our parents had good relationships. It wasn't like we came from these, terrible backgrounds of chaos and abuse. And no, we both had loving parents but it's just, we were young and we didn't have skills and we had a lot of challenges to start out. We didn't have a time to help, develop our marriage. No. We became husband and wife, and then we quickly became, parents.
Yeah, and then we had to financially try and work.
Oh my!
I was going to school during the day, working in the evenings, and then when Kristen, we had the baby. Then all of a sudden, I was student teaching, so I would student teach all day. When I got home, she'd pass the baby off to me. She would go off to work at a second shift. We didn't hardly see each other because we had to pay bills. We had to get through school. And we didn't have this fairy tale marriage. Go back to those expectations. This is going to be awesome. This is going to be so fun. It was like,
what just happened?
What's going on? What did we do? We screwed up. Yeah. We love each other, but this isn't what we thought we signed up for. Was going to be. It wasn't what we signed up for at all.
Right.
And by our own choices as well. And so many people out there, their choices get them in certain situations, their backgrounds, their past, whatever that is. That's neither here nor there. So here we are. We got started behind the 8-ball.
We did.
Like you said, and that's what you were referring to. We didn't know how to balance our checkbook finances. We didn't know how to communicate. I thought when I spoke that was real simple. It was life was easy. It wasn't. There's this girl here that didn't see things like I did.
No.
And I was speaking French and she was speaking Spanish and it wasn't clicking. And we were doing way more butting of heads.
Right.
Trying to figure things out than it was making love and just kissy smoochy all the time.
Yeah, that wasn't it, was it, honey?
Yeah, no.
And plus, I didn't know how to cook.
No,
That was really, that added to it. Oh, man.
Yeah, her mom was a great cook when she got married, but Kristen, I don't know if you'd cooked a box of cereal.
Okay, so here's the thing. Cooked a box of cereal. All you gotta do is pour milk. Okay, but anyway, I know. So literally, I still have this. Okay, so long story short, we found out I was pregnant in July. We got married in August. We had 3 weeks to throw this wedding together. But in those 3 weeks, as my mom's trying to give me this crash course in how to become a wife, she literally, we sat down and we wrote out some recipes. And I remember, I still have the recipe on how to make mashed potatoes.
You laugh today.
I know, but I didn't know anything. I mean, my mom just always cooked and dinner just appeared. I wasn't in the kitchen with her growing up. So, yeah. So, wow, we've come a long way, baby. I do know how to make mashed potatoes now.
And there weren't how-to YouTube videos
No.
then. How to be a good wife, be a good husband.
Yes. How to, work on communication skills. We really truly had nothing. So okay, back to your original question, just to recap here a minute. So what makes marriage hard? Our stories, kind of our different situations, our backgrounds, yes, growing up.
Maybe those unrealistic
Expectations, lack of skills. Again, we didn't, and we didn't know, we weren't even self-aware.
No.
We didn't know.
Can I back a little bit to those lack of skills? Because,
yes.
Like you said, we didn't have any. That is still going on today, though.
Yes.
I still see this. Because I think young people, as we're getting married, or any age getting married, you don't even realize what you don't have or what you do have until you're married. You don't realize some of those things you even need.
Yes.
How to really communicate, how to compromise, how to work together. We don't even realize this.
Right.
And now all of a sudden we're coming together and it's tough.
But it's kind of the reason why we wrote our book called An Intentional Marriage, why this podcast is an intentional marriage podcast, because we have learned that great marriages don't just happen. You have to be intentional. You have to be intentional in learning about yourself, learning about your spouse, learning new skills, becoming more self-aware, learning how your past influences your present, learning your triggers, your values, your core beliefs. I mean, I could go on and on over 32 years.
I was going to say, that didn't happen overnight. That's taken time. And we had to learn these skills over time. Most of the things we learned were because we probably did it wrong.
Yes.
We made the mistakes, and through mistakes and trial and error, we figured out what did work. And so that's what we're here. We're so excited to be able to share now through podcasts and videos, along with our book and other things that we do through the ministry, to just pour into marriages, to encourage marriages. We've been there. We've done that. Here's some things we've also tried. So as we start this journey, this podcast journey, we're going to be giving them little tips, little tools that we've learned that have been successful. And maybe you try those and they don't work, or that doesn't. That's okay. Try another one.
Yes.
Find another book. But you keep trying, and that's our entire message, is being intentional.
Yes.
Because when you're intentional, and I think of it this way, if you're not intentionally working, if you're not intentionally training, sometimes I just heard that this week at church, you're on cruise control. And when you're just on cruise control, or you're going through the motions, you're not getting better. You're going the other way. You're going downhill, because marriage sometimes is like pushing that boulder up a hill, and together we can do this. As soon as we stop pushing and working on it, it's rolling right back down. And that's how I visualize that sometimes. That's why we got to keep pushing. Because I know some of you out there, you may be struggling and you're going through this. Keep pushing, because when you get to that mountaintop together, you're going to look out and go, this is great. But so much of the enjoyment is that journey up. It's the striding, it's the pushing, it's the push and pull. That's the fun. So don't look past that. You're growing in it. And we'll get more to that as we go. Well,
and I like to, if marriage is like, if we're together in a rowboat, say, and we're out in the ocean, there's a cultural undertow that's just going to pull us under. That you have to row in the direction you want to go. Nobody drifts in the right direction. You have to intentionally row, and you have to have this destination. And for us, we knew that divorce wasn't an option. We knew that, hey, we're in this together. We're just going to keep doing the next thing. We're just going to keep, sometimes failing by falling forward and picking ourselves back up.
Yeah. And sometimes that boat, we weren't rowing, but we were trying to bail
water.
Out.
Exactly.
We were trying to bail it. We didn't know we were going whichever way.
The wind was blowing. We got water coming in.
But we knew just keep bailing. Just
keep bailing. Just keep rowing. Just keep going, because from where we started, and we've had a lot of hiccups and bumps along the way. I mean, it has not been a smooth and easy ride by any means. And
we'll get into those over
time. But yeah, I guess we're just here to encourage and say, you know what, if we have made it this far and God has pulled us through, he can help anybody anywhere with anything. And it's worth it. It's worth the work.
It's worth it. So with that, I want to kind of start wrapping up a little bit with a question that came to us here recently. If there's one thing, there's one advice or one tip pointer you could give, and only one, to a couple getting married or a couple in marriage that maybe they're struggling, what would that be? Oh
boy, what would you say, honey? You're just throwing this right out here at me. One thing, only one thing. Well, I mean, I don't want to sound cheesy, but you have to be intentional. I mean, I don't want to sound repetitive, but yes.
So what would that look like, being intentional? So if you're telling somebody, what does that mean? They don't even understand that word or concept.
Well, I think you cannot just assume you're going to have a great marriage because you married the right person. Like, okay, I found my soulmate and we're going to have a great marriage. It does take effort. And it's not always easy. Like, be realistic. You have to be realistic too. And it's not going to be easy, but there's so much joy along the way if you just keep doing the next thing. Just keep, learning more about yourself, learning more about your spouse, learning, different tips and tools on how to make your relationship better, which you are doing right now if you're listening. So you're already being intentional here. So good job. But yeah, what would you say?
Yeah, that is a good question that they ask, because there's so many things I'd want to say. But if I had to say one, the first thing that comes to my mind, again, these are unscripted. So we're thinking. Just want to share. I would tell a young couple or any couple, be two amazing forgivers.
Oh.
Because as you're working on things, I guarantee you're going to make mistakes.
Yes.
You're going to slip back to what you did, but being able to say, I'm sorry, apologizing, and then giving forgiveness and seeking forgiveness. Because as you're going down that road, like I said, you're going to stub your toe, you're going to mess up. So will your spouse. But be quick to forgive and quick to ask forgiveness. And we'll talk about that later in another one.
Yeah.
More depth.
But that makes me think of another point you just brought up as to why marriage is so hard. Because guess what? We're two selfish individuals.
Ooh, yes.
We're selfish by nature, and we like things the way we like things. We want things the way we want things. I don't know why you're not doing it the way I'm doing it, because it makes complete sense to me. Why, and you should do it the way I do it and think the way I think, because the way I think and do things is right, right? I mean, we all innately think that about ourselves. And so, we married another person that's selfish. So we are going to clash at times, and we are going to hurt each other at times, and we are going to make mistakes. But like you said, it is an essential component. Forgiveness is an essential component to marriage, because you can't last. We would not have lasted 32 years without forgiveness in our relationship.
Yeah, and like I said, we'll get into that deeper in a later episode where we can give tools on how to forgive and some of those steps, because that's sometimes not always easy. Depends on the severity. Yes. But it's just having that mindset of being intentional, constantly working, reading a book, listening to a podcast, forgiving our spouse. Those things, again, just tips and tools that, again, we've learned along the way that we wanted to just keep sharing and pouring into you guys out there.
Yeah. I think, like you said, too, and bringing it back to expectations and communicating, we can get into these in future episodes, because yeah, all of it is such good stuff, and we're not going to be able to cover 32 years worth of stuff in a 20 to 30 minute podcast here. So, but you know what? There's joy in the journey, and as long as you are committed to one another,
Yes.
one thing we've said, divorce is not an option. We've been through many situations where we could have divorced and bailed,
Or wanted to be divorced.
or wanted.
Now, my thing, and I've heard this said many times like this. Divorce was never an option, but murder I thought of.
Right? Yes.
No, that's a joke. Okay.
Yeah.
So,
well, kind of.
yeah.
No, seriously. But no, I mean, a committed mindset, and communicating expectations and needs and all that stuff that we'll get into in future episodes. But
we're glad you joined us.
Yes.
Got to hear our story a little bit, get to hear who we are, where we started, and then we'll just take you with us along this journey. So thanks for joining us here on the Intentional Marriage Podcast. And again, keep in mind, great marriages don't just happen.
You have to be intentional. Thanks, guys. See you next time.